Imagine a day long ago when the world changed forever. Jesus of Nazareth was sentenced to die. But have you ever wondered what happened to the people who helped make that day possible? What became of the men who played a part in Jesus' death? What if I told you their endings were as shocking as the story itself? Some faced deep betrayal and overwhelming guilt. Others fell into madness. Some took their own lives, while others lived in disgrace, haunted by what they had done. The fates of these men are filled with mystery, tragedy, and lessons that still speak to us today. In this video, we'll journey through the lives of the key figures behind that fateful day. We'll start with Judas Iscariot, the man who betrayed Jesus for just 30 pieces of silver. You'll hear about his heavy guilt and his tragic final moments. Then, we'll look at Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor who washed his hands to show he did not want to be responsible, yet still gave the order to crucify Jesus. What became of him after that? You might be surprised. Next, we'll explore King Herod Antipas, the ruler who mocked Jesus during his trial, and the high priest Caiaphas, who led the charge against him. Their stories reveal how power and pride can lead to downfall. Finally, we'll learn about the Roman soldiers who nailed Jesus to the cross, some of whom later changed in ways you wouldn't expect. Stay with me as we uncover these astonishing stories. This is a tale of betrayal, justice, and forgiveness. A story you won't want to miss. The story of Judas Iscariot is one of the most well-known and tragic parts of the Bible. Judas was one of Jesus' 12 disciples, one of his closest followers. But Judas did something that changed everything. For just 30 pieces of silver, he betrayed Jesus. Judas went to the chief priests and agreed to hand Jesus over to them in secret. The price? 30 pieces of silver, a small fortune in those days, but a cheap price for betraying the Son of God. Judas led the soldiers to Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus was praying, and gave him a kiss. This kiss was a sign to the soldiers to arrest Jesus. But after that moment, Judas was filled with overwhelming guilt. The Bible tells us that when he saw Jesus condemned to death, Judas felt deep regret. He returned the 30 silver coins to the priests and said, "I have sinned by betraying innocent blood." But the priests refused to take the money back. Judas was left alone with his guilt and shame. Tragically, Judas's story ends with his death by suicide. According to the Gospel of Matthew, Judas hanged himself out of despair. But there is another account in the book of Acts which says that his body fell and burst open. Both versions show how terrible his end was. Judas's story is a powerful warning about betrayal. It shows us how one bad choice, driven by greed or fear, can destroy a person's life. His life reminds us that betrayal carries a heavy price, not just for others, but for ourselves. Pontius Pilate was the Roman governor in charge when Jesus was arrested. Pilate had a difficult choice. He examined Jesus and found no guilt in him. Pilate believed Jesus was innocent. Yet the crowd demanded that Jesus be crucified. Pilate didn't want to cause trouble with the Jewish leaders or the angry crowd. So, he gave in to pressure. To show that he did not want responsibility for Jesus' death, Pilate performed a symbolic act. He washed his hands in front of the crowd and said, "I am innocent of this man's blood." Even though Pilate tried to distance himself from the decision, he still ordered Jesus to be crucified. What happened to Pilate after this? History tells us that he did not have an easy life afterward. Emperor Caligula, the ruler of Rome, reportedly removed Pilate from his position and sent him into exile. Some legends say that Pilate committed suicide, unable to live with the guilt of what he had done. Others say he was haunted by nightmares and tormented in his final days. Pilate's story teaches an important lesson about truth and courage. Sometimes, doing the right thing means standing against the crowd or risking personal loss. Pilate's failure to stand for justice shows the danger of compromising truth for the sake of popularity or power. King Herod Antipas was a ruler in Galilee during the time of Jesus. He played a smaller role in Jesus' death, but his story is still important. When Jesus was brought to Herod for questioning, Herod did not take him seriously. According to the Bible, Herod mocked Jesus. He dressed Jesus in a fancy robe and made fun of him, as if Jesus was some kind of entertainer or fool. Herod's soldiers also treated Jesus badly, laughing at him and making fun of him. Herod's life after Jesus' death was far from happy. Historical records tell us that Herod's rule ended in disgrace. He was removed from power and sent into exile. His family was torn apart by tragedy and scandal, and he died a forgotten man. Herod's story warns us about pride and disrespect. His mocking of Jesus shows how dangerous it is to mock things that are holy or true. Pride can lead to downfall, and disrespecting others, especially those who are innocent, can bring about serious consequences. Caiaphas was the high priest in Jerusalem during Jesus' time. He was one of the main people who wanted Jesus dead. Caiaphas saw Jesus as a threat to the religious leaders' power and control. He helped organize the plot to arrest Jesus secretly. Caiaphas and other priests gathered false witnesses to accuse Jesus of crimes he did not commit. They wanted Jesus to be sentenced to death because they feared he was gaining too much influence over the people. After Jesus was arrested, Caiaphas led the trial against him, even though it was unfair and illegal by Jewish law. He pushed hard for Jesus to be condemned. But Caiaphas did not have the last word. After Jesus was crucified, Caiaphas's own power began to crumble. Historical records suggest he was removed from his position as high priest. Without his position, he lost much of his influence and respect. Caiaphas's story reminds us of the dangers of religious corruption and abuse of power. When people use religion for their own gain and hurt others in the process, justice suffers. His downfall shows that true justice will eventually come, even if it seems delayed. The story of Jesus' crucifixion is often told with the focus on Jesus and those who betrayed or condemned him. But the Roman soldiers, the men who carried out the brutal act of crucifixion, also play an important part in this story. These soldiers were the ones who mocked Jesus, beat him, and nailed him to the cross. They did not know Jesus personally. For them, this was just another prisoner, another order to follow. But their actions were cruel and harsh. They made fun of Jesus, dressed him in a purple robe as a joke, put a crown of thorns on his head, and laughed at him as if he was a king. They were rough and unkind. But in the midst of all this cruelty, something remarkable happened. Jesus, hanging on the cross, prayed for these very soldiers. He said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23:34. Even in the worst moment of his suffering, Jesus showed kindness and forgiveness to those who hurt him. This prayer shows a powerful truth about Jesus. He offered mercy even to those who caused him pain. Then, there was one soldier who saw something different that day. According to the Gospel of Matthew, when Jesus died, a Roman centurion, a commanding officer, watched what had happened and was amazed. He said, "Truly this was the Son of God." Matthew 27:54. This moment of recognition was important because it showed that even those who seemed far from faith could be touched by the truth. Many early Christian traditions say that some of the soldiers who took part in the crucifixion later became followers of Jesus. They were changed by what they saw and believed in the message of love and forgiveness. The story of the soldiers teaches us something very important. Even people who do wrong can find mercy. No matter what we have done, forgiveness is always possible. This shows the power of grace, the gift of God's love that can change any heart. Now that we've heard the stories of those involved in Jesus' death, it's time to think about what it all means. When we look at Judas, Pilate, Herod, Caiaphas, and the soldiers, a pattern starts to appear. Is this pattern one of divine justice, or is it poetic irony, where the fate of these men fits perfectly with what they did? Some faced guilt and shame, others fell into despair or disgrace. It seems like there was a natural balance between their actions and their endings. This reminds us of a simple truth. Every action has consequences. The choices we make matter. Betrayal, cowardice, pride, cruelty, they all come with a price. But the story also shows us something more powerful. Even in the darkest moments, God's mercy is present. From the cross, Jesus showed forgiveness to his enemies. He prayed for those who hurt him and opened the door for everyone to be forgiven. This teaches us that no matter our past, there is hope for a new beginning. As we think about these stories today, it's worth asking ourselves, what role do we play? In our own lives, are we standing up for truth and justice? Are we showing kindness and forgiveness, even when it's hard? Or do we sometimes follow the crowd, ignore what's right, or hurt others? This story challenges us to reflect deeply. We can learn from the mistakes of those who came before us. We can choose a better path. One of the greatest lessons from Jesus' death is the power of forgiveness. Even as he was dying on the cross, suffering more than anyone else ever has, Jesus chose to forgive. He did not curse or condemn those who hurt him. Instead, he asked God to forgive them. This was an act of incredible love and strength. Forgiveness is not easy, especially when someone has caused great pain. But Jesus showed us that forgiveness is the key to healing. This message brings hope to everyone. No matter what mistakes we have made, no matter how far we have fallen, redemption is possible. We can be forgiven and start again. This is the true meaning of the crucifixion. Not just a story of death, but a story of salvation and new life. Because of Jesus' sacrifice, we are offered a chance to be made new. We don't have to be prisoners of guilt or fear. Instead, we can live with hope, peace, and joy. As we come to the end of this story, let's remember the key lessons. We've seen the heavy price of betrayal and cowardice. We've heard how pride and cruelty bring downfall. But most importantly, we've learned about the amazing power of forgiveness and mercy. Now it's your turn to think and reflect. If you had stood there on that day, watching everything happen, what side would you have taken? Would you have stood with Jesus or followed the crowd? Would you have shown kindness or cruelty? If this story moved you, please like this video and share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think about these stories and what they mean to you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that uncover the mysteries of the Bible and inspire your faith. Thank you for watching, and may you be encouraged by the message of hope, justice, and forgiveness.